Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to cover off a few things today, and we also have we also have a special guest with us on this webinar. But more about that later. We have this is a webinar that we have been planning for a while, but for a number of reasons, finally we have managed to put it together, and we are now delighted to bring you this session on the Safe Places to Work survey. And also, as a part of this survey, we will be introducing you to a guest, somebody who works with one of the winners, one of the 12 certified organizations as a part of the survey. So, enough about that. Let me first quickly take you through the survey. For those of you who are not familiar, the objective of our survey really was to evaluate different organizations in India on the degree of safety and inclusiveness they provide to their female employees. We covered a number of organizations from different sectors, from geographies across the country, varying in sizes in terms of the number of employees they have, and so on and so forth, domains, everything. So this was a survey that was actually kind of comprehensive in that sense. Uh, why, you may ask, why do we need a survey? Well, we have a number of different surveys, some that talk about great places or happy places or what have you, but none that were really laser focused on how safe women feel at the workplace, right? So we have, as you're all aware, we now have the Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace Prevention, Prohibition, Redressal Act of 2013. While the act has been in place, change has been slow, although I should add that it is a step in the right direction, and it's been slow but steady. Let me put it that way. Uh, According to GOI statistics, there's been a 54% increase in sexual harassment cases reported between 2014 and 2017. Approximately 2 cases a day in the country. Um, we don't believe that this reporting is primarily on account of the law, in the sense that these cases did exist, sexual harassment did exist well before the law. It's just that now that the law has put in place a legal framework, people have started coming out and talking about or reporting instances of sexual harassment. So what we did was we got together a panel of 3 experts. The objective being that we wanted an independent panel of professionals that people know and respect, because these panelists, the objective was for them to guide us with respect to how we are conducting the survey, what are the do's and don'ts, is it being conducted properly, what type of questions that do we have, and so on and so forth, pretty much everything. So these panel of experts went through our methodology at great length, great detail, and signed off on it to say that, okay, fine, we are now comfortable with what you have in place. And so these are the 3 experts that you see on the screen. Dr. Helen Joseph, President of Arohan and the Chairperson of Yuva Urban Initiatives. Really, more than anything else, an academic with impeccable credentials and somebody who's very well respected in this space. We also had Mr. Vivek Patwardhan, who retired as the head of HR for Asian Paints and its group companies, sort of like a CHRO. And again, he was on board because he brought in the industry experience, which we so needed as well. So we had the academic, we had the industry expert, which is Mr. Patwardhan. And then we had Sandhya Menon, who is an independent journalist and a writer, tweeter, blogger, etc. Writes on the subject. Most well known because she really brought out the hashtag Me Too movement. She was one of the very prominent faces of this movement. So hence that's the panel that you see there. This is the panel that advised us, guided us, and kept us straight, so to speak, ensured that at all points of time we would not take a wrong step, right? So that's really the methodology. These are the organizations that ultimately, out of the 50 odd organizations that took the survey, these are the organizations that were certified as a safe place to work. You can see Air Seva, some of the names here, Air Seva, Cactus, and I don't want to bore you with taking you through all of it because you can see the names for yourself. And these are the sort of winners, certified organizations, everything. And one of these organizations is who we have today as as a guest on our show today, and she's going to talk to us about what was special, what about their organization, what they did, etc. This is the very quick snapshot of the degree of harassment that that respondents sort of faced. Again, if you want, if any of you want to learn more about or get into more detail about this, the full report is available on our website. But for now, this is a snapshot of the sort of snapshot of the information that is sort of available for all of you to have a look at in terms of those respondents who chose not to identify the harasser. Some of the respondents claim, over 27%, in fact, of the respondents claim to have faced some sort of harassment, either occasionally or very frequently, and so on and so forth. Not surprisingly, single women were 30% more likely to get harassed than married women. That's what the stats show. And interestingly, women in senior management, faced more sexual harassment at the workplace than those who were junior executives, which was a little surprising for us. But again, this is women speaking anonymously, and so therefore we sort of, this is, as far as we are concerned, this is the gospel truth for us. And of course, this year we will be again rolling out the survey with the objective being to have a higher degree of participation from more organizations and more female employees. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to our participant and our guest on today's webinar, Arunima Sinha. She represents Times Internet. She's the head of L&D for Times Internet. Times Internet, I think, really needs no introduction. I think all of you are very familiar with the organization. An organization that builds premium digital products. And I think most of you are familiar with the products, but I'll kind of quickly take you through the iconic brands that Times Internet sort of represents. Times of India, ET, CrickBuzz, Ghana, MX Player, Dine Out, India Times, Men's XP, iDiva, NBT, Grade Up are some of the very well-known sort of products that Times Internet sort of owns, manages, and Arunima will tell you a little bit more about the organization. Arunima herself, to tell you a little bit about her, she's an L&D professional, actually an HR professional with more than 17 years experience, but currently the head of L&D at Times Internet, and has previously worked with organizations like IBM, United Health Group, and Microsoft. So a professional with immense heft and backing and experience. But enough about that. Let me kind of sort of hand the mic over to Arunima. She will maybe briefly introduce herself to all of you, and then we'll continue with the webinar in terms of what we hope to get through today. Welcome, Arunima. Good to have you on board.
Thank you, Anthony, and it's good to be on board as well. Just a short introduction for myself. You actually summarized it really well. I have 17 plus years of experience, and core of it has been in recruitment and learning and development. Currently, I manage learning and development for Times Internet. And in my role, I work actively with my stakeholders to chalk out learning paths and identify learning and development needs for all our employees, be it individual contributors or people managers. A very satisfying role in itself. Times Internet believes in independence of work. It also believes in being open to experimenting, and it has an environment that fosters learning. So it's great to be part of it as well.
Fabulous. The interesting thing about today's session for all of you is that on account of COVID-19, both Arunima and I are working from home. I think we are all conscious of the havoc that this virus is wreaking upon all of us. So we're both working from home. We are maintaining social distancing. I think that's the term that people use these days. So I'd urge all of you as well who are watching this webinar, please ensure that you're all working from home as far as possible. I know some roles simply cannot happen from home, but as far as possible, I hope you and your organizations are ensuring that you're working from home and in an effort to minimize the spread of this sort of dreaded virus. Okay, without further ado, since we have kind of had an opportunity to go through in brief what the webinar is about, and also the Safe Places to Work survey. First up, Arunima, congratulations. I think your organization did really well on the survey, and really today's webinar is really focused on kind of understanding from you guys, and especially from you, what is it that what is the sort of secret recipe that Times Internet has? Because I know that in addition to the Safe Places to Work survey, there are also other accolades that you have won over time. So we'll get into that as well. But specifically with respect to the Safe Places to Work survey, there were a number of questions with respect to how safe women felt at the workplace, with respect to whether their boss has tried to initiate inappropriate sexual contact, or whether a boss has asked for sexual favors in return for promotions, increments, etc., etc. Also, questions with respect to awareness around the prevention of sexual harassment law and the internal committee, right? So these are all key things, and your organization scored very, very well on these key parameters, clearly indicating that A, women felt safe at the workplace, and B, there was a high degree of awareness amongst all the employees, especially particularly the female employees. So I'd like to ask you, Arunima, what do you attribute this to? I mean, if there are a few key things that you believe ensured that Times Internet sort of really scored well in the survey, what would you attribute it to? The few key things that come to your mind.
So the stage that we are at right now, the what made us score really well in in the Safe Places to Work survey, the stage has not come overnight. It has come over a period of time where we have slowly but surely worked towards making our employees feel safer at their workplace. Okay. Some of the ways that we have done this is we've taken up POSH in a very, very active manner. We conduct online and offline classrooms every year. For every people manager, it is mandatory to go through a classroom session. For all individual contributors, it is mandatory to go through an online POSH learning, which is integrated into our LMS. Wow. We also have yearly trainings, once a year training for all our IC members. And we have an intranet that has the POSH policy uploaded and is regularly scanned to see if there are any changes in the IC, it is immediately put there. An important part that we believed is that when an employee is coming into the organization, they need to feel that along with other things that they are meant to be doing there, their welfare and safety is taken care of. So POSH is an important part or important subject of discussion in the induction as well, where you are made aware that there is a stringent POSH policy. There is an active IC committee. And if there is at any point of time that you feel that there should be any, you need to approach your manager or you don't feel comfortable approaching your manager, then there are these set of people who you can any day either email or you can walk up to them and say that this is what has happened or here is where I'm not feeling comfortable. I think that went a long way in telling people that you are being looked after. That, as per me personally, that is the most important feeling that any employee should have in an organization, that if, God forbid, something happens, I am not left in a limbo wondering where to go. I have these people who will help me. Every manager during the POSH training is made aware and sensitized to various factors, and it's extremely encouraging to see how the POSH training sessions, the classroom sessions, end up into a very active, interactive session because they have so many questions that they had never thought they'll ask. That is one. So POSH and IC is taken extremely seriously in the organization. Active policy, active training, every year training, and active monitoring of if there is any change happening anywhere, we quickly ensure that we put it in our system as well. Other than that, we've also had focus group discussions in the past with various female employees about what is it like to be a woman in TIL, Times Internet. That was a project we had done 1 or 2 years back. And the result of that was that we had upped our, it could sound a very small thing, but believe me, when you have women who are leaving late in the evening, or who are traveling in public transport, to have a stringent or have a robust transport system in place goes a long way in making them feel safe. So that was another change we had made by making them aware of the facilities and of the fact that who is it that they can turn to in case they are facing any kind of a problem when it comes to transport or going home in a safe manner. This and when it comes to gender sensitization, Anthony, I would not hesitate in saying that we struggled with gender sensitization for the longest time, wondering what to do about it, how to deal with it, because uh, for all of us, facing the fact that all of us have unconscious biases is the most difficult part in all. So we came out after after almost a year or 6 months of experimenting and seeing what works well, what doesn't work well. We finally come up with a workshop on unconscious bias. We do not call it unconscious bias. We call it conscious inclusion, in fact. And it has been a tremendous success across businesses. We've done it customized for business, which means we have not rolled it out one shoe fits all kind of a program. For every, as of now, we've had around 4 to 5 businesses that have gone through it, people managers, so to say, and we've customized it from scratch because one would have been a content business, the other was a technology business, where the kind of problems that you face when it comes to biases are different. End of the day, they are all biases, but scenarios are different. So that's been another very successful step that we've taken for for ensuring that biases are to a large extent handled.
Understood. Fair enough. And I think that's a lot of initiatives, Arunima. So clearly, it's not just, if I may put it this way, it's not just about the posh law as such, but it's more about a larger framework in terms of a greater conversation around inclusiveness, gender sensitization, a more egalitarian workplace, etc. I think that's really sort of what you guys have worked very well at, very successfully, and that's really what got you to this space. One question, I don't know if you have this information on your fingertips, but what's sort of the diversity, percentages at TIF? Are you, in terms of male to female ratio, in terms of number of employees, etc.? Is that something that that you can talk about?
So all I can say at this point in time is that the male to female ratio in Times Internet is quite decent. We would definitely want to up the ratio.
Sure.
However, it is not at a point where we are alarmed.
Okay. So more work to be done, but you're already at a good place, and you'd like to improve upon that a little further and see if where you can take it forward from there.
That is correct.
Yeah. So PIF has achieved 100% gender pay equality, which is as per an independent audit conducted by Aon. This is, I think, this is a very very critical issue, particularly in India, where I think there is a sense that probably more than 95% of the organizations are struggling to ensure that there is no gender gap, as it were, in terms of pay, rewards, promotions, etc. Right? But this is something that TIF or Times Internet has managed to successfully achieve, and I think this is no mean achievement either. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about this in terms of how this has happened, and tell us about the because I think the global gender gap report released by the WF has placed India very poorly, right? I think 108 out of 144 countries. That is obviously nothing to be proud of. But in this environment, if Times Internet has managed to achieve, sort of 100%, then I think that is something that the organization and you sort of can rightly take credit for and feel proud about. So, do you want to share with us what are some of the things that, in addition to what you just spoke about, that sort of got you to at this level of to enable you to score so well and so high in this particular survey?
Sure. So it was achieved over a period of time, and in fact, there was a lot of work done in the background, Anthony, to ensure that we have reached this stage where we can declare everyone out there that we have 100% gender pay equality.
Got it.
Compensation and benefit worked a long way. In fact, they worked very actively to ensure that a lot of work went behind looking at pay parity, looking at what roles people are playing, what are the job descriptions for each and every role, and vis-a-vis what is the pay that is there in the market. As per the market standard, where is it the Times Internet stands? The other very important part, and I would just not put it down to numbers, I would also put it down to an initiative that Times Internet consciously took about moving the entire appraisal process online. So performance appraisal, when it moves online, it automatically gives people the sense that everything is now being done digitally. There is there is no manual intervention as such when it comes to numbers,
Got
and
it.
hence the entire process becomes very transparent. So when you see what your manager is writing in comments when it comes to your performance, and when you also see what the manager's manager is is reviewing the appraisal and reviewing your comments, everything automatically becomes very open. You know what your manager is thinking of your work. You, while doing a self appraisal, become very conscious about what is the work that you've done in the past 1 year, and how would I be rating myself vis-a-vis my KRAs. So moving the appraisal process online worked a long way in also achieving pay equality, because then the entire process became very transparent. And of course, along with that, we had also, a lot of businesses consciously took upon hiring diversity as such. When it came to diversity and inclusion, we were of course talking about gender diversity here. And along with that, the last but not the least is what I spoke about some time back, is various initiatives that were taken when it came to the diversity project. So all in all, it gave the organization the confidence that when it comes to the market, here is where we stand. And when it comes to internally, we have our job descriptions sorted, we have our levels sorted, and we also now know what is it that people are getting paid according to their roles and according to their key responsibility areas. So this, of course, I've just said it in 5 lines probably, but the project was huge and it continued for like quite some time before we were ready to declare that we have achieved 100% pay parity.
That's fabulous. Actually, we a lot of us often talk about merit, right?
Hmm.
And I think when an organization is able to reach this level of sort of pay equality, right? I think that is where we are saying it's true merit. It's really
Right.
a merit-based system, and you're getting rewarded for what you do. I guess your output is more important than, let's say, factors like how much time you spend in office, how much face time you show to
Yes.
your supervisors. Those are all really no longer key considerations. What's really important
Right.
is, have you hit your KRAs? That's it. And the whole system is very, very transparent and truly merit based. I think that's fantastic. So this is good to know. And again, congratulations to you and to everybody at Times Internet who's really worked so hard to ensure that your organization has hit and sort of been accorded this accolade by an independent audit. So that's sort of a tremendous achievement. So congrats to you and all of you
Thank
for
you.
that as well. Wonderful. So I think we are sort of almost out of time in terms of our webinar, the time that we had scheduled for this. To inform our viewers, we will be. This is a pre-recorded webinar, and all of you will be able to join and ask questions. So I'm going to sort of ask Arunima if she has any last thoughts that she wants to share with us before we close the webinar. After which, once we close the webinar, then each of you participants will be able to ask Arunima any questions that you may want to ask. So Arunima, any thoughts before we end the session?
The only thought that's coming to my mind while I've been talking about all this about in Times Internet is that it's not just about having a good posh policy or stringent posh policy or running training initiatives across the organization. It is also about how much of this are you talking about in your day-to-day life. which is something that people in Times Internet do. We believe in creating an inclusive environment. We believe it to the extent that some of our festivals have the underlying theme of, uh, being a hashtag altogether, or doing hashtag doing the right thing. It is about talking about this in your everyday life, which will eventually bring the change.
So conversations. Not everything can come through and through a sort of an in-person training or a workshop, but actually
Yes.
conversations, culture, things like that, even one-on-one water cooler conversations. This is something that should be made part of our daily life, and that's really how we bring about permanent and lasting change. Absolutely agree with you, Arunima. So thanks so much, and I'm going to end this recording now so that we can throw the session open for our participants to ask questions. But thank you once again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you.
No, I was just saying that I was thanking Arunima and letting you all know that she's available to take questions. We are on live, so if you have any questions for Arunima, post our post a session that we just had, post the webinar that you just saw. Now is a good time. We have another 10 or 15 minutes at most, in case any of you have questions to ask. Arunima, you can hear me clear, right? Okay,
Yes, I
super.
can.
So as the questions come up, I'll ask you, and then we can take them one by one. We'll give folks a few minutes to kind of just. Dr. Nidhi Sharma is asking, do you suggest that whenever a new recruit enters an organization, he or she should be given POSH training? That's pretty much what you do at Times Internet, right?
So as of now, we actually haven't started with the training when the new recruit joins, like the immediate first day when he or she joins. It happens as and when the systems are set up and the training is assigned to their ID. But I think this year onwards, this financial year onwards, we are planning that within the first 1 week of the person joining the organization, the POSH training has to be assigned and they have to go through it. Other than, of course, talking about it in the
that
induction.
makes sense, Arunima, because I think right at the beginning one should finish off. You check the compliance box, and B, sensitization as well. So definitely something that should be done right up front and not delayed further. So Dr. Nidhi Sharma, I hope that answers your question. Just to add a little bit to what Arunima said, I think what they are planning to do this year, Times Internet, it's something that a lot of organizations are also planning to do in terms of making the POSH training right at the beginning, the sensitization right at the beginning. So hopefully with that, we should be in a better place from a sensitization perspective. Dr. Nidhi Sharma is also asking what I can do as a chairperson of ICC. From a training perspective, I guess, Arunima, any thoughts?
From a training, and I can actually comment only from a training perspective, just to let you know, Dr. Nidhi, that from a training perspective, it is mandatory for every IC member to go through a training once a year. And ours is very robust. It continues for the entire day. It is done by a legal counselor herself. And I would say that for every organization, it would be mandate to follow this rule, because it's good to know what changes are coming through. It's good for the employees to know who are the members of IC. And that ways you would be empowered enough to handle whatever queries come your way. And this is, mind you, Anthony, only from a training
Agreed. Yeah,
perspective.
sure. And just to reiterate to all our viewers, Arunima is an HR professional, but at Times Internet, she's the lead for L&D. So her focus is really more on training, learning, training, and development. So would be great if you could restrict your questions to that. Ramana Kumar is asking if do you train on POSH and gender equality simultaneously for your employees?
Okay, great question. So we had thought of starting with that, but unfortunately that didn't work. One reason was POSH was made a mandatory training and has been made a mandatory training for everybody. For gender sensitization, or as we call it, conscious inclusion, we realized that it would be better if we go business by business. We have a lot of businesses under Times Internet, and each one is versatile and dynamic in its own way. So what we did was, we, instead of asking for nominations from there, we approached the business. My stakeholders would be my senior HRBPs. We approached them asking if they would want this customized for their people, and that is exactly what worked. So no, to answer your question directly, we do not conduct it simultaneous for everybody. POSH is mandatory for everyone. Gender sensitization or conscious inclusion is absolutely need based. However, the topic is such that I think we will be covering all the businesses very soon this year.
Wonderful. So Sanjay has a question for you, Arunima. I'm not sure. I'll ask the question anyway. If you can, if you're comfortable answering, please go ahead. While constituting the internal committee, was the credibility of IC members thought through? Did the organization think if they are perceived as neutral, will they manage the complaint without any biases? Things like that. I mean, essentially, credibility of the IC. Is that something that you would like to respond to?
I would rather not, Anthony. I'm not involved in the process, so I would not say something that I have no
fair
idea
enough.
about.
That's why I kind of caveated the question. Fair enough. So we'll skip that one. Dr. Nidhi Sharma is asking that is actually making a statement. I think I work in a technical institute. So what kind of training is required for students? Arunima, you want to give that a shot?
Yeah, thinking. So when you say what kind of training is required for students, do you mean training on the whole, or are we only talking about POSH here?
I mean, I suspect we're primarily talking POSH, gender equality, etc. Because that's what that's what our section's on. I suppose we wouldn't be qualified to comment on the technical aspect.
So I will say something which is a very real life conversation that happened with one of my POSH trainers in the past, who had been called to deliver POSH trainings for a particular college. Without naming anyone here, from the conversation, one important thing that came glaringly out is it is very, very important to make people, or let's say students, aware of POSH and gender sensitization. I would say if you do not want to overdo the two, you could maybe mix it while making POSH a very law-centric and very case-sensitive training. You could also include gender sensitization in it. But I would personally, I personally very, very strongly feel that students need to be made aware of prevention of sexual harassment. What are the because that's a very vulnerable age they're living in. And with the kind of advent of social media and the exposure of social media that we have in our lives right now, it's all the more important for them to protect themselves and to know who to go to if they are facing any kind of a problem. Because most of the time what we see is they try to solve things amongst themselves without reaching out to the elders or to anyone who can help them, and that really messes up the entire situation. So I hope, Dr. Sharma, I've answered your question.
Yeah, I think you did. I think you did. So yeah, Dr. Sharma, I said thank you so much. Apurva Shetty is asking, are companies required to have an internal gender equality policy as well as the POSH policy?
I would not honestly be having any knowledge on required to have an internal gender equality policy. We started with gender sensitization. Just to rewind, a POSH is definitely required. Gender sensitization we started with because it came out as a big factor during all our focus group discussions in the past. Scenarios like women saying some of our work decisions take place during the smoke or tea breaks, where if we don't smoke, then we're not a part of it. We have no idea what's happening. We are generally not invited in the evening, get-togethers which happen informally, assuming that we will not be going or not be interested. Or maybe when you enter a room, full of the opposite gender, then nobody looks you in the eye when they're talking to you. And it's not from a very negative manner. They're just not comfortable looking at you in the eye. So when we heard of these situations is when we thought that, okay, high time we need to do something, because ours is a young organization. And if we have such problems cropping up at this point in time, then we need to deal with them. So going back to your exact question, I would not be aware if that's a mandate for people to have. Anthony, would you know anything about that?
It's not a mandate, Purva and Arunima. It's basically dependent on the individual organization. So some organizations have a view that they want to actually push gender sensitization, gender equality, diversity, and as a part of the DNI sort of offering initiative within their organization. So they push that, but it is again very specific to every company. It really is about the company culture and company policy, not so much the law. POSH is a legal requirement. Hence, every company has to follow it, has to comply. But with respect to gender sensitization, not a legal requirement. It's a nice to have. It's not compulsory. It's not a must. It's a nice to have. So we'd strongly recommend that you do it if you aren't already. It definitely makes for a much better work environment, etc. But it's not mandatory. So we have a question from Janish, who is asking, taking a cue from Ramana Kumar's and Dr. Nidhi Kumar's questions, Dr. Nidhi Sharma's questions, do you think gender equality, also gender diversity, should feature prominently in POSH-related workshops? So I guess we kind of answered that already. I mean, the question is very similar to what you previously answered, Arunima. Really, should this be gender diversity and equality? Should that kind of be a prominent part of POSH workshops? So POSH is bundle it as a part of POSH. Don't keep it separate. So in POSH, you might have a 2 or 3 hour session in which maybe a couple of hours will be on the law, and maybe you can have an hour set aside only for sort of gender sensitization and diversity.
Yeah. I would just say in this case, not to dilute the two. Like you said, Anthony, right now, that 2 hours for POSH and 1 hour for gender sensitization. Let's have a very clear demarcation between the two, so that people are not confused by the end of it as to what are we exactly supposed to be doing. That's
fair enough. So Neil is asking, from a thought process of going a step ahead in terms of POSH being a legal requirement or an awareness from a holistic company approach, is there any thoughts on how POSH can be an ongoing engagement activity by HR or L&D team in an organization? Sort of always kind of engaging the people and not just the once a year because it is a legal requirement, but can we make it a part of our DNA, as a part of our culture, as a part of what we do every day?
So great question, because that brings me to to something that I had spoken about during the webinar, and I'd like to elaborate a little more about it. Some of our people, from the organization already there in the webinar, so they'll be able to relate to what I'm saying. So POSH is compliance. Okay, let's face it. When you tell people to do something as a compliance, it takes a bit of a follow-up, and you cannot really be pushing them too hard while it is a mandate, because POSH in itself is quite a sensitive topic. You have to strike a fine balance between telling people how important it is to do, but at the same time you need to also not push them to a corner and tell them you have to complete the POSH. So one way of engaging Neil would be, to answer your question, is to have a great POSH module uploaded on your site. I have been through a lot of POSH modules in the last 1 year, just as a sense of market survey and all that. What my sense was that you can engage an employee only by making a subject kind of a story. While you're telling them of the scenarios, you are also engaging them, and they're just not looking at clicking the arrow button for the next slide just to complete it. So that is one kind of an engagement that companies can look at. Be very, very careful when you assess POSH modules. As we are going ahead in this, in this society, in this world, POSH is getting to be a kind of a compliance that every organization has to have. So you might as well spend that extra time in understanding what will engage your employee when they open that video. They may not look at it time and again. Let's face the fact, once they've done it, they may not open it again. But while they are at it, why not make it in a way that makes them make that, which gives them a good recall of that module. And so in our organization, what we've done is POSH may not be an engagement kind of an activity. We are kind of, we ensure that the module is engaging. But along with that, let's say, for example, for a 15th August or for an 8th of March, which is Women's Day, or for example, in November, which also celebrates Men's Day, we kind of ensure that the underlying theme of that program maybe sometimes surfaces or touches upon inclusion, sometimes touches upon gender sensitization, things like say no to bullying, say no to political discussions by the water cooler, say no to gender discrimination. All that really helps. So yeah, these are ways you can make a topic engaging.
Yep, fair enough. That's helpful. I think that answers Neil's question. So Rakhi is asking, what are your thoughts on having a gender-neutral anti-sexual harassment policy? Would you recommend it for companies such as yours? I mean, it's a hot topic, really, this whole gender neutrality and the posh law kind of only protecting or providing coverage to women under at the workplace. So,
right.
What are your thoughts on this?
I would rather wait and watch as to where, what the decision is. See, training is part of it. I'm not really making the policy as such. I'm not part of what constitutes the various nitty-gritties of the policy. So me saying, yes, it would be a good thing. Of course, it would be, maybe it would not even touch upon the actual part of the policy, making it gender neutral. Whether we should make it gender neutral or not, honestly, my thoughts right now, I would rather not touch upon it, because I think it involves way more than just saying that yes, we should or no, we should.
There's a lot of issues that go into it, and you have arguments on both sides as well. So it's one of those issues where whatever position you take, you're likely to hear a lot from the other side. So, okay, fair enough. Sanjay is asking, with the COVID scare around, what are your plans to ensure continuous learning in 2020 while ensuring business as usual? And this is a very relevant and good question, Arunima, because people are saying now that all of Q1 in the new FY, April to June, is likely to be, some form of quarantine or the other. So there's a lot of, I don't know, some of it is rumors, I'm sure, but a lot of people are saying that. So today, for example, there's a news article about how Australia is planning to shut down for 6 months, which means we're really talking from April to September. Now, I don't know how true that is or not, but it's something that's out there. So I have a feeling that a good part of this year, maybe the first 2, 3, or 4 months of the new financial year, it will be work from home in some shape, manner, or form. So have you started thinking about it? And what advice would you have for folks who are on this, who are attending this session? How do L&D professionals, HR professionals, and even others, lay people, in terms of what should they be looking at, or what can they share with their management or their HR and L&D teams?
So starting March, when all the work from home actually started, the first thing that we did was whatever sessions were left for the month of, half the month of March, we converted them into online sessions. The good part is that our organization, or let's say the L&D team here, we have already started with online webinars maybe a year back. So people are used to kind of logging in on the go, listening to, we have technology webinars, we have product webinars, we have even webinars on subjects like people management and feedback. So that is the first thing that we did for the last bit of March. Now for the month of April and May, we have taken it for granted that we are not going to have any classroom sessions until further notice. The moment you make that mental shift, it's better to plan ahead. My first suggestion here would be to make a decision to go online for now. And let classrooms completely take a backseat, because we have no idea what these next few months are going to bring for us from a learning perspective. On the same lines, I know L&D professionals are grappling or struggling with budget issues. So look at the market has a lot of offerings for people like us who are managing learning and development, for free webinars, for free learning sessions. Ensure that you schedule one webinar at least for yourself to at least assess what each training vendor is doing. I'm doing that for myself every day. So every day I attend a different webinar to see the quality, the interaction, kind of audience that we have, kind of questions that are coming, and how's the speaker. It really helps. Right now, we still have time to research. For technology, we are going completely online. So when I say online, it's not webinar. We're planning to completely go online on cloud for training, like a full-fledged one-day training, 2 days training on any subject. That's part of the training need identification. Be very, very cognizant of what your business needs. As of now, the main priority of any of your businesses would be to be business as usual or to keep the work going as far as productivity is concerned. So again, strike a very fine balance when it comes to urging them to learn and letting them be for some time. Right now, everybody's mental situation is such that we do not want to be pushed into anything, but we are already doing stuff that should keep us afloat. So in this entire thing, you just need to sneak in learning in a way that will aid their work rather than hamper it. For example, tell them how to manage teams, remote teams. A lot of companies are struggling with it because work from home has never been part of the culture. Give a lot of, you could have mindfulness or well-being sessions online for your employees. They need them. Believe me, at this point in time, mental wellness is something that people need to look at a very large scale. Third would be have active conversations with your stakeholders and get them and ask them when is the right time to approach training need identification questions like we have done. It's always good to be on the same page and act as consultants to your stakeholders rather than push your agenda forward. I hope that has answered your question, Sanjay, because these are some of the things that I'm talking from live experience that we are doing in Times Internet right now. So, I mean, I hope
No, I definitely, I mean, very, very useful. I don't know if it answers Sanjay's question, but there was a very, very comprehensive response, Arunima, and I think that is pretty much what most L&D professionals would sort of focus on this year. And I think one point that you meant, that you stated, which is basically to not just push your own agenda, but to work with the business. I think that's really critical because for a lot of L&D professionals, I think we tend to get caught up in I have to make sure that I hit all, I check all the boxes for my year, and I just have to, sort of ram it through, push it through, whatever. But in the process ends up alienating business, which is already struggling, how to, with taking this online. So I think a lot of conversations with stakeholders would probably be the sort of best way to deal with this in the coming weeks and months.
Yes.
Fab. So that's I will just give it maybe another minute to see if there are any more questions, but it looks like there are no further questions. I think everybody's kind of exhausted all of the questions that they had to ask you. And there was very your last comment on learning for 2020. I think that's really something that is spot on. Really, I think that's very, very useful information for L&D professionals, for HR professionals to figure out. I think you just have to be mentally prepared that this year is all going to be online, and then work backwards from that, right? Rather than expecting, fair enough. Okay, so Arunima, I don't believe we have any more questions. Everybody is, quite a few people weren't able to actually hear the audio, so they had dropped off. But those folks who were able to, which is good, thankfully, we have quite a few folks who managed to stay on here, see and hear the webinar. So they're sort of being appreciative and thanking us for the session. But thank you so much for your time for this webinar. This was really very, very useful. I learned a lot today. So like you said, this was my webinar for the day. I'm going to continue logging in and sort of hopefully learning more from similar sessions such as this. But thanks for your time, and stay safe. Stay safe, Arunima, you and all your colleagues and friends at Times Internet, as well as all of you participants. Thank you all for joining. This was it was all of your participation really made this a good, insightful webinar. I think the questions, there were a lot more information that came out from the questions that all of you asked. So I think Arunima was able to share a lot more out of the questions that folks asked. So thank you all very much. We're going to close the webinar now with a big round of thanks to Arunima. Thank you, Arunima.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.